This could explode our convention in from two ways from Sunday. One could be the explosion of being sued. The other one is people distancing themselves to try to avoid being connected and the possibility of problems.
Welcome to the SBC Pastors Roundtable. This is a post-annual meeting episode. We're going to be talking about a variety of things today, but let me first introduce you to the three pastors that are joining us today. So let me throw it to Jim. Introduce yourself for us.
I'm Jim Bohrer. I've been at my church for 20 years. I started my walk with Christ at Complicit University, was part of Baptist Student Union, did some missions for about a year and a half in Colorado, did seminary down in Louisville with my wife. We were called to work with Billy Graham for a year, and we had kids, and my wife said we need to settle down, and the church rat called us, and so we've been here and have enjoyed it for all this time. My four kids have loved it and been blessed. Now to my friend Bert.
Hey, I'm Bert Spann. I'm the pastor of First Baptist Church in Hohenwald, Tennessee, just outside of Nashville. I've been here 7.5 years. Prior to that, I was in Michigan, up in the Ann Arbor area, and I had an established church there that I was pastoring, but I worked very closely with the church planting network, and we hosted some church plants in our facilities, and I worked with other planters in NAMB in the church planting efforts. Tony, how about you?
Well, I'm Tony Hicks. I'm the pastor at Clifton Baptist Church in southeastern Louisiana. Been there for 18 years. I'm a former naval officer. I went to seminary when I was 40 years old at Dallas Theological Seminary. I'm married for 27 years, got 2 teenage kids. We're having a great time at Clifton Baptist Church. Bobby.
Thank you, Tony. I'm Bobby Gilstrap. I've been an SBC pastor and church planter, a NAMB missionary to Michigan, where we work in church planting and associational missions, was the executive director for the Baptist State Convention of Michigan, and also the founder of Dynamic Church Ministries, now based here in Atlanta, where we help smaller attendance churches and their leaders to grow. I want to throw our conversation today just kind of wide open here at the beginning, guys. Our intent today is to talk about post-annual meeting in Nashville, Tennessee. I want you to kind of tell me, what do you think the impact is in maybe your church, but also other churches, of all the things that we've seen surface around this annual meeting, before the meeting and during the meeting, things that you saw? How does that impact the way people, as we used to say, people in the pew? You may have chairs now, but people in the pew. What do you think their response is?
A Supreme Court case.
Yes.
Now,
Right.
that is
Yes.
clear cut, man. The Supreme Court of the United States is having to deal with a NAMB Southern Baptist issue.
Yes.
That's not left to interpretation.
My question there, from what we were talking about, is how do our people respond? I mean, does that concern them? If you stood before your people, if you hadn't already, but if you stood before your people and said, the North American Mission Board has now petitioned the Supreme Court of the United States to take a case where the amicus briefs that have been submitted by the ERLC along with other groups have said that Southern Baptists are a hierarchy. Southern Baptists have an umbrella organization, that the North American Mission Board has rights over its partners to make decisions. What's the response of your people?
Bobby, when that was brought up at the convention, it was just briefly brought up by somebody on one of the microphones. I looked to my left, and there was an aisle between me and the other people. There was a group that looked at each other and said, "What is he talking about?" And I went over, knelt down on my knees on the concrete floor, and explained in a whisper to that small group in a Reader's Digest version what's going on. Here are messengers at the convention itself who had no idea that a case was before the Supreme Court.
Do we have a pope or not? That's, ultimately we say it that way. Are we have a Catholic pope over our convention, or are we Baptists? We have sole authority over our churches, or not? Either that, and that is what's a very strong Baptist distinctive. It's
To
not
me,
a
that should have been one
tertiary
of the
issue.
major issues of the whole convention.
Yeah,
Absolutely, because it infringes on what? Church autonomy.
right.
Yes.
And not just church autonomy, the autonomy
Christian
of
autonomy.
all of our structure. Yeah, the autonomy of all our structure. Our associations are autonomous. Our state conventions are autonomous. Each
But
of our
that was
entities are
barely
considered
even a
autonomous.
footnote
But the thing
at
is,
the convention.
so can I just say from my experience, when I became a believer, I went back to the Catholic Church and I asked questions to my priest. He asked questions of me, and we came back to the Bible. And he even said, yeah, we believe this. I know what the Bible says, Jim. I don't know why we believe differently. But we follow the church authority. And I said, well, I'm going to go to a church where I'm following the Bible first and following Jesus, and then we'll deal with that. Everything is under that. And I ended up in a Baptist church because that's what I saw. If I want to have hierarchy structure, because I believe it's biblical, I'm going to go to a Catholic church, a Presbyterian church, Methodist church. These people have come, and I would not go to a Catholic church to try to make it Baptist, because they're already set. And so it really disturbs me that this is not an unclear thing. It's a core doctrine that that most Baptists, 90%, really get, and it's why we're Baptist. And it just totally got obliterated in the zeal to, I don't know what they're trying to accomplish for the kingdom by doing this.
Now, was it the sole membership resolution about this?
Yep, I believe it
Okay,
was.
but that
So you have
does
this huge-
nothing to help us in court.
Well, but my point is, we have this huge irony that the convention says, yes, we have this autonomy, and yet you have the North American Mission Board and the ERLC saying just the opposite.
Preach it, Tony. Preach it.
In court.
Well,
Preach it.
and going back to my original question, would these kinds of things concern people in the pew? And
Yes.
my vote is absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, they're going to be significantly concerned, especially if they look at the amicus brief. They see what has actually been said. Because here's one of the big issues related to that, and you guys probably know this, but one of the big issues is that almost nobody, and I'm not familiar with any organization, especially within Southern Baptist life, that actually submitted an amicus brief correcting that error. The
Actually, they joined
ERLC
it.
did not. Yeah,
They
no.
joined it.
Yeah, many of them did. And even our executive committee at the Southern Baptist level, they should have stood up and sent in an amicus brief. Yeah, it's totally silent.
Crickets.
And my question is, again, why did our president, J.D. Greer, not come out? He could have said, you know what?
Crickets.
Regardless of what all these other entities do, as the president of this convention, I need to tell you that I believe in the system that we've always used.
Okay, so why would he not? Why would he not? Why would these others not?
Good old boy network. You don't want to, because they all promote each other. They all sell each other's books. There is a, it's all
true.
connected.
He's right.
It's true. No, he's true. Yeah, that's true.
It's all connected. And these guys, it's more about the buddy system. Look what Harvest Chapel out there in Chicago. Look what happened to all these guys that, when you had the one guy over at, what was that?
McDonald's,
but also you had the other guy too that was there too. He did Numa, and he became real liberal now. He's all open. But these guys are all part of that big circuit, that kind of circuit. They all promote each other's books. Are all part of, like, Zondervan and the book selling, and even the whole thing with Lifeway. That's you don't have your student be the one to sign the check. I mean, just so many things that overlap that are just conflict of interest, and you can't make decisions based upon facts or not. You're making decisions based upon feelings with millions of dollars.
Say, man, I've said it before, chase the money trail, you'll see the problem.
Well, but the people in the pew, if you go to the people in the pew and you put the facts that we know, even ignoring what Jim's just said about the old boy network or whatever you want to call it, ignoring that part, would most of the people in the pew be concerned about the self-dealing, about the all this other kind of stuff that appears to be present by the lack of, I guess you could call it integrity or character to stand up for what we believe in?
Yes,
I'll
they
tell you,
would.
one of the things that bothered me at the convention is whenever the Lifeway guy got up and gave his report, and you know, basically he's on this apology tour for all the financial decisions that he's had to go back. Nobody mentioned the $1 million gift that was given to Rayner before. If you're having to sell off everything, yet somebody found an extra $1 million sitting around to give as a thank you gift.
Yeah.
And another thing about that, it did not go to the whole board.
Yeah.
Right.
We've heard that the Supreme Court, those justices are going to sit down before long, and they're going to have this case sitting in front of them. It's going to have the paperwork, obviously, the briefs that the North American Mission Board has submitted. And we know in those briefs, they have referred to the North American Mission Board as the missions board, the way they phrased it all the way through. They've called it the mission board. They've made several other statements that, well, like one of the other big things I know that's been mentioned is they've referred to state conventions and other organizations as entities. We obviously don't consider them to be entities at that point. Then the justices are also going to be sitting and looking at a couple of amicus briefs that the ERLC has submitted. One of them was submitted to the U.S. Fifth Circuit Court when the appeal was there before NAMB filed this petition. And then the second amicus brief they filed to the Supreme Court. And that's where they had claimed that the SBC was a hierarchy. SBC had an umbrella organization. Don't need to recount all those things again. But we talked a little bit about what is bothering us. But let's zone in as we wrap up this discussion. What are your biggest concerns for your church where you are, for maybe your association or your state, or maybe the SBC as a whole? What are the biggest things that are concerning you right now once this hits the justice's desk? And before I throw it to you, I mean, the justices can make a couple of choices. They can decide not to take it, which means it won't be heard there. It'll be returned back to the Mississippi court. And then NAMB, from what I hear, has appeals lined up to try to not have to carry that into the court. But that's what would happen. They could accept the case, which means then it will go ahead and move to be able to start doing depositions and those kind of things. And there may be some other kind of options, but those are the two main options. So what do you think related to our churches in the future?
I hope the SCOTUS kicks it back, because it was correctly ruled on the lower courts that a NAMB doesn't have any right or authority over any other Southern Baptist group. They're a cooperating partner. They're not in charge. Otherwise, it changes the polity of our denomination. And if you want to be Presbyterian, go be a Presbyterian. It's as simple as that to me.
Okay, pretty simple. Bert, what do you think?
How do you be kind in saying this? I'm not being vindictive, but I think Ezel, if this is taken, especially if this is taken, I think Ezel should lose his job.
I would agree.
And I fully think that every trustee on NAMB's board should be removed, because they have seen this thing go along the whole way, and they've not removed him and let it get to this point. And I also think that every trustee for the ERLC should be removed, because they've allowed the amicus briefs to continue too. Now, that's a mighty broad stroke, but I'm telling you, I'm on a board in our state convention, and if our leader in this particular ministry did something to this degree, it's our job as trustees to say, no, this is not what our churches want. I'm acting on behalf of the churches. These folks should be removed.
Well, do you think, just a real quick follow-up to that, do you think the trustees are acting on behalf of our churches? I mean, that's who puts them there, because we
Absolutely
elect them.
not. Absolutely not. They're not.
Who are they acting on behalf of? Is it their own self-interest or
they're
something
acting
else?
on behalf of whoever right now, Kevin Ezell, because if they were acting on behalf of the churches have said constitutionally, here's who we are as Southern Baptists.
They're protecting the institution of the structure of NAMB and the leadership that's in that institution, which is, again, I hate to go back to CRT. This is one of the things where people talk about systematic problems. Not saying I agree with CRT, but this is the sort of thing where you have this good old boy hole up protect, and it's just becomes corrupt, and that's a criticism that people, it's valid. Corruption happens.
Yeah. Okay, Tony, what do you think?
Well, I'm going to go back to my past. I told you I was raised Pentecostal. It was a Pentecostal denomination that was very top down. I mean, from the very top guy down through the state, and it was really ruled. And I was in that denomination for a lot of years, so I saw a lot of it. The beauty of the Baptist system is the autonomy. And I tell my mother that when I go home, and I said, we don't have those problems because we voluntarily associate with the state. We voluntarily associate with the association. We voluntarily associate with the Southern Baptist Convention. So this autonomy is the beauty of the system. And anything that attacks that and tries to set up some kind of hierarchy or some machine, as Jim kind of mentioned, it's anti-Baptist.
Well, I'm deeply concerned legally.
Yeah.
What this opens us up to. Now,
okay, unpack that. Yeah, unpack that.
Well, I mean, at the same time we're dealing with this Supreme Court issue, we've also got an independent group coming in to look at sexual abuse in the Southern Baptist Convention. What's going to happen if we're now all tied together and these victims start suing us? Well, I think case in point is the Catholic Church several years ago. I'm telling you, all our missions money is about to go into court systems and lawsuits if this happens, because that's the precedence has been shown with the Catholic Church. You start suing, and man, everybody in direct line is going to get it.
Yeah, it's what they legally call ascending and descending liability. And yeah, you're right. With the Catholic Church, that's what happened, because there's a connectedness in just their whole religious structure. And
well, let's go. Let's unpack that a little bit, though, because the structure protected the perpetrators and didn't deal with them properly.
Right.
That's why they got sued. And that's the other problem too, is if the EC gave passes or didn't investigate thoroughly, or we're saying we can't do anything about these pastors move from church to church, certainly will be liable. And when, let's be honest, Bert, I mean, and Tony, we should be liable at that point. If we're a hierarchical denomination and we didn't do anything about it, top up, and they're hiding it or they're not addressing it, we are liable at that point. And the victims have got a point. But if we're autonomous and people are making bad decisions or sinning autonomously, then I didn't do it, and therefore I'm not liable to it. Not that I don't feel pain for the victim and stuff. It's just, but that's the issue is at stake, which you're saying. But the Catholic Church didn't deal with it properly.
Right.
And we've not handled the ball well. I don't think we're quite where they were, but we didn't handle it well.
Right. Well, and the issue with the Supreme Court ruling is that if they were to rule in favor of what the North American Mission Board has presented, then that could potentially make the whole network of churches across Southern Baptist Convention liable. And what, I mean, both you guys have just said something that brought this to mind. I read an article just yesterday I believe it was the Baptist Recorder. I believe that may be wrong. I'll have to look that up to be sure. But anyway, I believe it was. But they were just basically outing a local pastor who NAMB had assessed, NAMB had helped place, NAMB had been funding. I think his funding has just run out recently, but they have been funding all this time, and he was just arrested for sexual abuse of a child. And our children, not but multiple cases. I don't remember all the details of that, so don't quote me on that specific. But my point is that here's somebody who's just been arrested. NAMB has had definite connection with them because they did the assessment, everything else. They have the money connection. They've been funding them. I don't know if they were funded by anybody else. One individual I saw online when that article was posted, she said she called her local association and state convention where this guy was, and they didn't have any connection to him financially. But if this were to be approved, or not approved, but if the ruling was for the North American Mission Board by the Supreme Court, then whether anybody else was funding him or not, it could still come back to any of the other churches, potentially.
Yeah, but in that situation, did NAMB know of violence or of criminality until he was arrested?
Yeah,
that's
probably not.
Thing. But you had like J.D. Greer as our president, called the redstone, who had been complicit in hiding something. You had Dr. Mueller, who we almost elected president, who was an advocate for C.J. Mahaney when, there was so much smoke and you could smell it, and just blatantly calling people up and saying, don't pick on Mahaney. And Mahaney was covering up too. You have a number of leaders down there in Texas, right? Or Matt Chandler, he gets every pass in the book. And you just hear his own statement. Oh, the victims were too far away. They're 20 minutes from my office. I couldn't go visit them. I mean, you're going, eesh, just going, poor handling of our core leaders. They don't, and then, we don't know what we're doing. I'm sorry. You don't know how to handle a felony. You don't know how to say a felony is wrong. And then you have people in our pews, brother, where I watched them respond to this saying, oh, how dare you bring the police involved in this? How dare you? This should be a church matter. No, it's a felony. Even the pagans know it's wrong. And the Bible says it's wrong. So at some point, there's some things you don't have. Bring a brother or sister to them and talk to about it. Hey, you molested this kid. They need to face prosecution. And we have people in our churches that don't understand that they will put us all at risk because their church is just goofy. I'm sorry.
Well, and having been around some guys that their role in the legal system is to prosecute these kind of things.
Yeah.
They will tell you that even in this connection, and I'm going to say almost without a doubt, NAMB did not know about this one situation I mentioned. NAMB did not know anything about it. Had the background checks were probably done, all that kind of thing. So there was no knowledge. Okay, but from the prosecutorial point, they're going to target saying, "Hey, look, it was just inadequate supervision. It was inadequate background check. It was inadequate." I mean, there's all kinds of holes they begin to poke in that. And it doesn't matter if you did your best. It doesn't matter if you signed a waiver saying that I released from. Those things oftentimes don't stand up, So, yeah, that's exactly. And to me, that's a concern for my church. It's a concern for other churches that all this kind of thing starts being connected. And the Southern Baptist Convention, the executive committee, you talk to their lawyers and they will tell you that every year they send a letter. I mean, they've got a letter that they send every year because they are sued multiple times a year. They're named in lawsuits because that's where the big money is. See, that's where the big money is. It's at the big national office, and they send the letter to them clarifying there are no members to the Southern Baptist Convention. The only time the convention's considered a convention is the 2 days when we have our annual meeting. And all of our churches are autonomous. All of our entities are autonomous, et cetera. And that argument has held up in court and against lawsuits for decades. This could change it all. This could change
America, the Boy Scouts of America, when they changed, and then the floodgate opened up.
Right. Yeah, and I think I think they're about out of business now,
I
aren't
was
they?
going to say, what gets me is the fact that sex abuse is one issue that could open us up to a can of worms.
Yep.
What about all the other issues? What about
Right.
church shootings?
Yep.
Just any of this,
Right.
suicides after counseling, all kinds of things that come down the pike in the local church.
Sure.
Man, sex abuse is just one problem of many.
Right. And that's the one hits the front page of the news. But if
Mhm.
somebody slips down going down the stairs in front of your church and they come back and sue your church saying that the railing was a little wobbly, so they didn't have good footing, and they're suing your church, if this kind of ruling comes down, potentially they could sue your association and your state convention and everybody else, because it's like,
Yep.
hey, they're connected. They could maybe even sue the other churches in your association. Well, they're an association. They're obviously connected. So I'm going to sue them all. I don't know. Let's wrap this up. But what would be your closing words? We can't take it back from the Supreme Court justices. There are things I wish could have been done before it got there, but it's going to hit their desk in a few days. What do you say now as we wrap this up?
God have mercy.
Yeah.
Please be merciful to us for the bad decisions we have made. Don't give us what we deserve. Like you said, please let this thing be kicked out so that it's not judged at this level.
Yeah, because you think it would make the news?
Oh,
Yeah. Other closing thoughts, Tony? Jim? Go ahead, Tony.
Well, it will make the news if we get sued. I don't know that the court case itself, the public would understand all the nuances, but once it becomes a lawsuit and it starts trickling down, and I think it would also, if there's an understanding within the churches that now we are liable for what goes on in another church and we may be sued, then I think you might see an exodus.
Yeah.
Meaning churches disconnecting from the Southern Baptist Convention?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, just become a good, strong, conservative, Bible-believing, independent, non-denom, something. You're going to figure some way to be not connected.
Baptist. I mean, you can still be a Baptist. You don't
Yeah, sure.
Baptist and Southern Baptist, you know.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, Jim, what do you think? We're going to give you the final word before we wrap this thing up.
This could explode our convention in from two ways from Sunday. One could be the explosion of being sued. The other one is people distancing themselves to try to avoid being connected and the possibility of problems.
I don't think it will change Southern Baptist polity, even if the court takes it. And if the court rules in favor of NAMB, that doesn't change our guiding documents as far as the Southern Baptist bylaws, that kind of thing. But it puts a major court
Question mark.
decision. Yeah, that's right. And it puts a major court decision on the books. The Supreme Court has ruled.
Yep.
Okay, so now you have a precedent that every level court, I mean, every jurisdiction.
Common law.
Yep, it sure is. And I think that's dangerous. Well, guys, thank you for joining us on this roundtable. This is such a difficult topic. We just hate to see all the stuff that's happening with the North American Mission Board, and particularly this particular thing where they have filed this petition. It's Lord have mercy, Bert, as you've well said. We need to be praying about that and praying about what happens in the days ahead and how that's going to impact the convention as a whole and all of our churches as well. Well, I'm Bobby Gilstrap for our SBC Pastors Roundtable. We appreciate you joining us. Thank you for joining us, and we hope that you'll join us again next time.